I'm just going to stay there. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Hey, it's the Sustainiacs. I'm Mike Vincent. I can talk really, really well. She's Emma Whiteman. This is episode 2 for 2023, and our guest Bill Driegert was going to be like episode 7 of last year, but scheduling and all other kind of stuff, and he's in high demand and all other kind of fun stuff. But he is here, and he is the head of operations and co-founder of Uber Freight. And I just learned that he did not come up with the name. Is that right, Bill?
Well, I think the Uber Freight combination was pretty obvious. We were founded with an Uber, and we did freight, so it's pretty pretty self-explanatory. The name comes easily.
It does. I remember when everybody was talking about we're the Uber of freight. You actually are the Uber of freight, right? You can stake that claim.
Yeah. I have an interesting story in that when we started, I went back and I looked to see how many companies had called themselves Uber for freight, and I counted up 47 when we started that had either on their website saying we are the Uber for freight, or had the quote directly we are bringing Uber to freight. So. Yeah, it was pretty common before we came to market, and then as soon as we came to market, it was then it became digital freight matching. That became the normal term.
Yes.
The digitalization of freight.
Yeah. I was going to say only 47 claiming it is way low, but actually in print, that's
more.
Pretty impressive.
That was what I could find. Yeah.
Wow. That's only you because I guarantee you, almost 100% of them said it at one point or another. they're the Uber of freight. It's unbelievable. It's really cool. I remember digitization when it was we got off the fax machine, right? And you could fax through your computer. That was digitization at one point, Emma, which was crazy. But hey, this is a Sustainiacs, and we usually talk about plastics, or we're talking about we talked about plastics last time, where we're talking about Enso Plastics. That's they create a thing, Bill. It's really cool that they teach microbes that plastic is food. Have you ever heard about that before?
I was then that just eats the plastic and easy recycle.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The theory, which turns out to be true, is that the Earth doesn't know how to devour plastics because it hasn't been around long enough. Once it's around long enough, it will learn that it is actually food and it can decompose it really fast. So they're just speeding up that process to try and make that happen, which nothing can go wrong with that, I'm sure.
Yeah, mutant microbes sounds... microbes or nothing. No risk there.
No risk there at all. So Emma, we're back in my favorite neck of the woods, which is logistics, and Uber Freight does a lot of great stuff, digital freight matching and optimization and all that kind of stuff. And the reason I reached out to you, Bill, is because of the SSC, or the Scheduling Standards Consortium, because I think it's the effort is brilliant. And hopefully people are jumping on board. We'll find out where you guys are on that, because the impacts for both efficiency of freight and the impacts environmentally and sustainability wise, emissions wise, greenhouse gases, et cetera, and even costs going to the store and buying stuff. The positive impacts are really endless of what could come out of that, which is tremendous. But I kind of wanted to illustrate a little bit about how integral supply chains really are into the green movement and what is going on there in sustainability wise. Maybe you're not burning, hydrogen, or only using trucks that are burning hydrogen. Maybe you're still but there's a ton of other stuff that's going on there that impacts emissions and green, right, Bill?
Yep, 100%. If you have an inefficient supply chain, it means you're burning fuel. And thanks for the SSC introduction, but we'll get into it. But part of the opportunity there is that it's this point of interface where if you can't coordinate trucks in and out of the facility efficiently, it means they're idling, they're waiting, they're burning fuel, you're wasting miles, you're wasting time. It's just inefficient. So this is one of those points of interface in the supply chain that it's just to date, it's not efficient, it's fragmented. There's a lot of extra steps and handoffs that happen that can be a lot more.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's interesting. And I really want to get into this, but real quick, for someone like me who's not a freight person, who doesn't come from logistics or transportation, give us a little bit background about yourself, how you came into this position, and also what exactly is Uber Freight? Like, you're saying it's the Uber Freight, and I can assume what that means, but what, for people listening that don't quite know, what exactly does that mean?
Sure, I can give that backstory. I've been in freight now since 2006, and before that, I was in operations for 7 years at Pepsi. And I've kind of seen freight evolve in those intervening, what is it now, 17 years that I've been in freight.
Wow.
And we started, Uber Freight was an idea actually that came to market back in, I think originally, as soon as Uber was in the market in 2012 to 14, people started talking about what an Uber for freight could be like. And at the core, it was shippers and carriers and brokers downloading Uber for the first time, using it and saying, well, this is magic. How could I have something like this in freight? Because historically, freight execution is just, it's very high friction. You got to make phone calls. You got to send faxes. Hopefully people still do send faxes, but
yes, they do.
Hopefully very few. But when we launched in 2016, it was really exactly that. How do we bring an Uber-like experience to freight? How do we make freight easier? How do we take steps out of the process? How do we bring technology into the hands of carriers? And when we launched, I remember looking at what the cost for a broker to move a load was, and it was $150 to $160 of labor per load that they're transacting. And where's all that labor go? Well, a big part of it is calling carriers and negotiating. And you're calling 30, you're making maybe 120 phone calls a day, calling 30 carriers, asking where their trucks are, negotiating prices right out of the gate. So, we can make that process easier if we just had an app in the hands of carriers and we had fixed prices and they could just hit a button and book a load. And that was early on, that was the focus. How do we just make that process easier for carriers? How do we empower particularly all these small carriers in the market? Because roughly 70% of all carriers have 5 trucks or fewer. So there's a lot of small carriers in the market. They don't have a lot of leverage. They don't have good tech. So we knew right away we could put better technology in the hands of carriers. And that was the first real momentum we had in product adoption, was by small carriers. And they loved it because all of a sudden they've got options. They book a load at 2 a.m. and they can see the rate up front. And if they don't like the rate, no harm, no foul. They can, but now they've got information because they know what the market is. They know what their options are. So carriers found it very empowering right out of the gate. We got incredible adoption. We still have the best brand perception among carriers. And I think it started with very early on, we focused on the carriers. And then on the other side of the market, it was, okay, how can we're driving all this automation empowerment on the carrier side. How can we empower shippers? Because going back to that original vision, when you think of Uber, you tend to think of it as a rider, not so much as a driver. I don't know if you've ever had the option of driving. It's also a very slick application. But really, our focus was on the carrier, so more on the driver side, right? Less on the rider equivalent, because you're dealing with big shippers, your Fortune 500 companies, and they aren't going to download an app and have their load planner sit there poking the app all day long. They've got ERP systems, CMS systems that you have to integrate with. And that actually ties into this initiative, because early on it was, okay, well, how do we integrate with all these different systems? And the old standard is EDI, which has been around for decades. I think it originally came to market in the 80s. And the new standard is APIs. So an API is just an application programming interface. It's basically an endpoint out there on some server in the cloud, just listening, waiting for other applications to plug into it. And so what we started doing very early on was, where can we build APIs? How can we integrate it? How do we automate? Pricing was a very early focus, but that was part of a broader effort to just build out shipper capabilities. So I know it's a very long-winded response, but at the core, Uber Freight, we are a tech company trying to drive an Uber-like experience, really simplify freight. We do that through technology, and APIs being one of those points of interface that allows us to automate and streamline freight.
That's amazing. So basically, the way I'm understanding it is like the truckers, I don't know if that's the right word, but they can say, okay, we're going from here to here. Sure. These are our prices. And then someone who needs to move a load can log on and say, this is where I need my load to go from where. And then it's like, if it lines up, then you're getting, it's the best of both worlds for both, because you're maybe getting an extra shipment, or and as someone who needs to ship things, you're shipping where you need to go without having to be on the phone nonstop.
Exactly. Basically. It's a two-sided marketplace. So if I'm a shipper, I can get a price instantly, which before we came to market, shipper or carrier couldn't get a price instantly. That capability just didn't exist. So that's all new. It all came to market. But a shipper can get a price instantly, see what capacity is. On this other side, a carrier can download the app and be like, I'm in Topeka. Here's 50 loads in Topeka. Here are the prices. I hit a button, I book it. And that's 100 times easier than it was before we
Oh, yeah.
market.
I wonder and I don't know if you have information on this, but I wonder if it results in more. I mean, I guess this is the whole point of this conversation, basically, but in theory, it's going to it's going to result in trucks always being full. You're never going to have a truck that's like returning from a shipment that doesn't have anything in it, that's just burning fuel and idling, and what we were kind of talking about before.
Yes, absolutely. Because one of the things we do, the network is so dense now that we generate matches on most of our loads, meaning that if I'm a carrier, if I click on a load, I can see, oh, here's other loads I could pair with that and generate a bundle. And what we found is, and then we actually present these full bundles as well. So I can log in and say, I'm in Topeka. Oh, here are 3 loads linked together that I could book just in one click. What we found is when they do that, they actually reduce the empty miles on those segments by a third versus if they just book them automatically. And the numbers in the market vary. I've seen numbers from quarter to 35% plus of the market or of the trucks miles being empty, but that's still a huge problem, right? That's the efficiency and the density that we're trying to drive in the market. And if by having more density and by having more access to freight, carriers can make better decisions. They can find those loads that are 1 mile away, 2 miles away, right, versus the one that's 150 miles away. And they can also find the loads that work for their time. The more freight available, the more they can work it within their hours, right? And so that's a big part of the opportunity, because
it's amazing.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
And it burns a lot less fuel.
Yep.
As well. But I mean, and there's other things along with it as well, Bill, right? I mean, it frees up a ton of capital, right? One of the things that we were trying to do at Freightways in the beginning was do, the whole BIDA, Blockchain and Transportation Alliance. One of the things that was self-executing contracts, because there's like billions of dollars that are tied up in trucking and shipping contracts that have already been successfully executed. They're just sitting there waiting for the proof, right? I mean, this takes us a step towards that as well. Less faxing. It's all integrated. Things can move a lot quicker, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have a lot less overhead managing the same business too, right? So it makes everybody more efficient, right? I mean, it's the classic, you can do more with less as a result.
Do more with less. Yeah.
In terms of, direct capital investment, it means if the trucks are more efficient from a carrier perspective, you get more revenue per truck. And ultimately, that's partly why, that's a big reason why our carriers love it, is that they log on our platform, they can have more options, they can start getting paid right away. And it's just a different way of engaging the market than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So as we dig into SSC, because the more I think about it, the more it's integrated with everything we're talking about right now, right? You've got to, so tell us what it is. Tell us what it is. And then I want to know if the story of how it came together is true or not. You guys were just kind of sitting around BSing and said, wait a minute, this is actually brilliant.
Yeah, I could give detail on how it all came to be, but I don't know if it's quite all that exciting, but yes, it was some.
Yeah, probably not.
So Scheduling Standards Consortium, it's ultimately about bringing together carriers, shippers, TMS providers to come to agreement on standard ways of interfacing starting with scheduling as the focus. And historically, scheduling has been the final frontier of automation because it's probably the most fragmented part of the process in terms of the systems you're engaging with on the other side of the process. And what you see is, actually, I was trying to pull this data earlier, like something like 25% of shippers by count still use manual methods like spreadsheets or pencil paper or whiteboard to do their doc scheduling, because you just have a long tail of small to mid-sized shippers who haven't invested in technology, maybe don't have a TMS system or adopting a TMS system. And as a result, scheduling can be highly manual. And then when you go to the big TMS providers, there really is nobody that's kind of consolidated this scheduling process across the ecosystem. And so what that means is that most scheduling is done through manual processes, emails, phones, and there are some portals that allow you to log in. And what has happened is many of the tech forward carriers have built like bots and automated ways of logging in those portals, but those bots break because the portals are always changing. And it's just not a standardized process. Well, much as pricing APIs over the last 5 years have become standard, what we're starting to see now is a lot of interest in scheduling APIs. Us and others have started to work on these and think about what they could look like. And with that, we wanted to get ahead of the problem with EDI, which is you have a standard that's not a standard. We wanted to get together and come up with a standard that we could all advocate for in the market and ensure that as these new APIs are implemented, that they're all talking in the same way. The way I liken it to like us all agreeing we're going to use a USB-C plug, and it's just that point of interface that we're all going to plug into systems the same way. And then what we do outside of that, right, is, and if we want to do proprietary stuff or really cool stuff with the scheduling or automate this or that, that happens within the four walls of of us or Convoy or JB Hunt or EMS vendors.
Right.
But we're just agreeing that we're all going to plug in and talk the same way. So that's the concept of the scheduling API. We are very, and it was pretty exciting to get the announcement out there. I think the momentous thing is just everybody realizing, okay, these competitors are coming together. This must be important. Like clearly,
right,
getting Convoy and JB and us all to agree on something, right? Much less all come to the table and do a common PR is pretty momentous. And I think it just speaks to the fact that we all suffer from this, and nobody's trying to differentiate or compete just on the standard. We will all compete based on what we do once we pass that data back and forth, but not just on the plug, right? Nobody's going to make money by coming up with a new, USB-C standard. But that's not where opportunity and difference.
Well, I mean,
is, yeah.
But that's a brilliant. I mean, that's one of the brilliant parts about it. It's one of the needed things about this, and I think it goes beyond just the impacts of it are beyond just the scheduling and this, because it shows how collaboration can be done and it is needed across all kinds of different industry, right? I mean, you've got, just the international shipping is absolutely ridiculous, yeah. Bill, and you know this as well, the different steps and things. I mean, I was in Steve Cox's office at Steam Logistics, and he had written out every step of the process door to door, yeah. And it took up 40 foot of whiteboard, right? All the different steps that have to go through, just because everything is so manual and nothing is standardized. Well, this is a tremendous thing, because you're right.
Yeah.
The standardization of the communication is what the industry needs, so that you can get down and compete, and not compete at the most desperate person in a room is going to set the price type of level. You can actually have service and move forward, right?
Yeah. And just to give you like a sense of the problem, without naming any names, like one of the biggest providers in the space, they have, 200 people plus that just focus on EDI integrations on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So every one of these like providers like us, shippers, TMS vendors, all these players in the ecosystem are all doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. I can't imagine how many like hundreds of millions of dollars we all probably spend just inputting, Home Depot location information and facility information, the same exact information, right, over and over and over again. So,
and then the problem is that you have thousands of aliases, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're not all the same. And then when you go to integrate with another TMS, you got to change all that and have another integration platform and all other kind of crap, right?
So if we just agree on certain, like standardizing certain points of interface, scheduling being the easiest place to start and being super focused on that, then there's just a lot of waste, because to your point, then we can start innovating on the stuff that actually drives value, that actually improves efficiency in the market and adds value to the shippers and the carriers. Because you can imagine.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
I was going to say, you can extrapolate to the end state of scheduling. I mean, scheduling, we have automated booking. We can track trucks with high precision now. We know where they are. We know if they're running late or they're running early. So you can start to think about all the use cases that if you just have easy ways of interfacing with multiple systems on both sides of that shipment, you can start to reschedule, you can start to replan. And then you start to get more sophistication on the yard management systems and the WMS systems, because they can start to reschedule the shifts inside the facilities, and you can just get the whole system can get a lot smarter. And if everybody's spending hours just plugging things in, those are hours wasted driving value on the other sides of that interface.
Yeah, and that's where I was. That's exactly where I wanted to go. Is that road past this? This is setting the groundwork, the foundation for some really incredibly large steps forward in efficiencies in logistics, which then impact sustainability across the board, right? Because, like you said, and like you were saying, Emma, and what you realized very, very quickly is reducing those empty miles. Now you know whether that schedule is going to be there, and you know it not because of a fax and because Bill just happened to see a Twix message that came off the dot matrix printer, which used to be the way we communicated when I started in logistics. You sent a message to the AS400 and hoped somebody was at the other end and tore off the message on the dot matrix printer and got it to the right person. That's how we handled hot freight. But instantaneously, and then you can, if it's through API, you just put that right in. You can funnel that right into your route optimization and your load planning, right? And then reschedule and remove things. Because what is it, Bill? It's like 18 minutes or 12 minutes or 18 minutes or something like that reduced each day for a driver, and we would solve our capacity.
Solve the driver problem. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you solve the driver problem. That's how bad it is.
Yeah. And you can imagine a scenario, which I'm sure happens every day, where you have one driver running early, one running late, and within the facility, they've already staged the product because they didn't know the other driver was running late. And if they'd known an hour earlier, they could have changed the dock door, gotten that driver that's early and loaded, and not had to shuffle things around in the facility. Versus an in state where, say, it's an Uber Freight truck coming to the dock door. We know they're running early. The facility, the schedule. The app hits the schedule API, immediately schedules an earlier slot that hits the WMS, which is immediately rerouting the pickers or the forklift, right? And you're saving on labor, right? The truck then is not idling, waiting to get a free dock door, right? The truck's back on the road faster, right?
And this is no, sorry, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, no. If you make every point of that process easier, then all of a sudden the whole system becomes more reactive and more flexible, and you eliminate.
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody within logistics and within the supply chain, which the supply chain is basically everybody on the planet is in the supply chain, whether they realize it or not. But like you said, within the four walls, with your WMS and your production systems and your ERP and all that other kind of thing, you could be adjusting the speed of production lines or adjusting work to one production line versus another based on the arrival or the schedule of raw materials coming in or going out. Back up on the docks can cause huge problems, as we're seeing in right now with inventory levels that went through the roof and screwing up the efficiencies like crazy. It's amazing.
Yeah. And in transportation, you're never going to eliminate earlies and lates. Traffic varies, right?
Sure.
There's always some reason that there's volatility, and it's all about then how quickly you can react. And if you take out friction in that process of reacting, right? If I don't have to call you and then you write it in your sheet and then that gets uploaded here and then that goes there, right? If you're just doing that instantaneously, then all of a sudden the whole system's reacting faster.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too, is I'm thinking about on the part of the driver too, they're not sitting there and waiting and, like you said, idling and releasing gas into the atmosphere when it's not necessary. You're saying, okay, well, you're free. Here we go. This is happening. And I know we've talked a little bit on the podcast here and there. Michael's mentioned like a lack of parking spaces for a lot of like truckers is a pretty big deal right now. And I was actually sitting here thinking that maybe if we don't have as much downtime, I mean, obviously truckers need to stop for like overnights and scheduled breaks. And I totally understand that. But maybe if there's not as much downtime where they're sitting and waiting for their next load, maybe some of these parking issues might get a little bit easier for people. I mean, is that something that, I'm trying to.
If you give them more hours back, then you think that then they'd have a little more flexibility on finding a parking space on the other end because they're not going to be as constrained. I think ultimately that probably balances out a little bit because then the more efficient, if I'm a driver, the more efficient I am, I want to get that next load faster too. So that all kind of trades off. But
you think about it this way, Emma, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill. I'm not sure these numbers are going to be right, but a driver can drive 10 hours, right? But they usually are only driving about 6.5 of those. The rest of it is waiting. That's called on duty, and they could be driving, but they can't because they're sitting at a dock waiting because the scheduling sucks. Mm-hmm. Is that pretty accurate, Bill? Those numbers are pretty close, right?
Yeah. I guess what I was.
You got to think a third of their hours that they could be driving, Emma, they're sitting around doing nothing, not making any money.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and I guess what I was doing is I totally understand that. And what I'm trying to do in my head is kind of like go through or kind of list all the ways that this can then help for sustainability. Like I think that this is, we've made it very clear that this is super useful for a lot of reasons. And I guess I'm just trying to.
If you give drivers time back, they'll make better decisions. They'll have more options. And so things like parking, things like finding that other load, right? They will make those trade-offs, but it gives them more options. And so to Michael's earlier point, right? If you take, I don't forget the exact number, whatever, it's 15, 20 minutes. If you give it back, you solve the driver shortage.
I've heard 12. I've heard 18. It's somewhere in there. Whatever it is, it's in the teens, and you solve the driver shortage and the capacity crunch. Boom, is over with that.
But there is a direct impact on parking, in that if the whole network's more efficient, it means less trucks to do more freight. Meaning,
well, if a driver's got 3 more hours to drive every day, he's obviously going to have to stop and shut down less often, I would imagine. At least it would change where that's happening and occurring. And you're right, he'd have more, or she would have more flexibility. But Emma, the reason I jumped on this quickly with Bill is because I really see this as a foundation that goes forward to a lot of things that are building right now. And I'm just connecting dots out further. This type of information is going to be essential as we go down, and we're far from it, but not as far as maybe you think, is autonomous trucks. No, Bill? I mean, you've got to have this type of integration. Otherwise, you've got somebody with paper controlling an autonomous truck. And what the hell good is that, right?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm not trying to say that this is but in any way not sustainable, because I think there's only a benefit to making systems more efficient. And I mean, the sustainability and the supply chain have to go hand in hand. And efficiencies, when we're building on efficiencies, that overall makes the sustainability of the planet a lot better. And like you said, moving into autonomous trucks that are completely efficient, and then there's more pocket in the consumer that can then spend more money on maybe green initiatives or things that they want to do. So it's not only good for their life, but it's also transitioning into, I'm just trying to lay out in my head all the wonderful ways that this is sustainable that might not be immediately obvious. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's true. I mean, if we need less parking, we have more green spaces. If we are idling less often, there's less CO2 in the atmosphere. One of the questions I did have is you kind of had mentioned linked deliveries. So is that something where it's different companies that need smaller shipments that can all fit in the same truck?
No, this would be full truckload to full truckload. Yeah, the majority of the freight on the road is full truckload, partly because most freight is with the biggest shippers. They can consolidate, and it's most efficient to run it as a full truckload. So by default, most freight gets bundled where it can, right? I mean, of course, you have an LTL market, but if you look proportionally, the truckload market it's about 10 times the size of the LTL market.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And there's some space in the middle for partials, but it's not that big a space. Now, there are companies, of course, trying to go directly after that. And we have a product internally, OptiPro, like we solve that too. So that's a problem worth solving when you're still talking multiple billions of dollars of freight moving in that middle space. And so we do solve that as well. But when I talk about bundles, it's specifically about linking loads together. This is where, because if you think too, if I'm an owner operator, if I'm a small carrier, I may not have visibility to all the loads in the system. I mean, across all of Uber Freight now, we've got $17 billion of freight under management. There's no way one person can be like, oh, let me find all the routes. So we can show them, hey, here's options and here's routes that can link together. Yeah. And they're much more efficient than if I'm just manually going, oh, I'm going to Pico to Dallas. Let me see what's in Dallas. And then, oh, I need to go to Louisiana. Let me see what's, tech.
Yeah. Now you start deadheading all over the place and burning fuel for no reason when you start doing that type of stuff, right? You can reduce this tremendous. So, Bill, why are the three players the three players? How did Convoy, JB Hunt, and Uber walk into a bar and go APIs and scheduling? Yeah. How did that happen?
Yeah. So you may be surprised to know that, we all talk. We're like, so there's as much as we compete in the market, we all have, I'd say, friendly relationships when we go to conferences. And it was actually at a conference that so a couple things. I've known Dan at Convoy for a little while, and all the way back to my time when I was at Amazon. And then I started chatting up with Stuart and Spencer and some of the guys at JB. And this is one of those, again, it was a problem that, oftentimes if you're catching up with a competitor, so is there any areas where we see opportunities? Well, the scheduling, it's a big problem. Like if we all get together eventually and solve it, that would be fantastic. And so then that drove a conversation, and then we got together and said, hey, yeah, let's do this. So here's what it could look like. Like I know Stuart at JB had some prior experience with the blockchain initiative as well. And so there have been these standard bodies in the space, and we could have looked at what had come before and said, let's be very focused on scheduling on the API interface. It's clearly a problem and an opportunity. It's emergent. It's happening right now. If we can solve this and come up with a standard, we also think that it's non-competitive, right? What we've seen is a lot of interest from other carriers to enter in. So we are now in the process of bringing other carriers and TMS vendors and partners into the consortium so that we can continue to drive momentum. But that was it. It was just casual conversation. It's one of these topics that comes up repeatedly. Like, okay, where do we all have a pain point? Well, we all have a pain point when we're all making the same calls to shippers and trying to get a slot and doing this in a very manual way. And we all also had started to see that, okay, APIs are coming to the market. TMS vendors are starting to think through, okay, how can I automate this process? It's the time. And these things take a lot of time to drive adoption.
Yeah, sure.
This is not a fast moving industry. So part of it is getting ahead of it. But you're really talking, it's going to be brick by brick, because first you have to get the standard in all of the systems, and then you have to get shippers also engaged and adopt and show them the value.
They have to start using them. Right? Yeah, and the cost of that integration or switch over to the new standards, I don't know what that would be. I mean, I can't imagine.
For the shippers and for us, it will be very low, because we'll start implementing the standards. And I think what'll happen, I would expect, is that most carriers will start to implement the standards where they come to market. And so they will start to have that capability. From a shipper perspective, it's more going to be driven by their TMS and how, updates on the TMS side or replacement cycles in TMS systems.
Oh, yeah. So you could just do a download of an update module for this TMS system or that TMS system, whether it be McLeod or Ascend or whatever it happens to be, and those standards would just be in there, right? So that would be fairly seamless for them as well,
that's the ideal. Yep, that's the ideal.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. So a lot of people are joining in and going on. Are there people that are coming in that are kind of like, you ever audit a class when you were in, university, just kind of that you're like, why are they here? Are there other industries, in other words, that are interested in the work that you're doing here, saying, wait a minute, this is something that we have to model here?
Yeah. I mean, we're eagerly bringing in new members, and there was a lot of interest right out of the gate. And so what we're seeing is, I think everybody's gung ho at this point. And so, we, in the consortium, it is a technical standard. So we have a lot of technical members. And I'd say by and large, when you're dealing with the engineers and the frontline kind of technical staff, they're all very eager to just drive towards a standard. And because again, most engineers, just like anybody, wants to work on the hard problems, right? They don't want to just have to reinvent the wheel. And so if they rely on a standard, they can just be like, okay, now I'm going to go do the cool stuff, the automation, the shiny stuff, the stuff that's actually going to be like a tech advantage for my company. Then that's what I want to.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. Michael and I talk all the time about how important it is. Like in any situation, like collaboration is so important, and we're not going to reach these goals just by ourselves. It's something that comes up on the podcast all the time is how important it is to learn from each other and, talk about things and talk things through. So it's interesting to hear that you have these like competitors, quote unquote, that are sitting here and like, okay, let's brainstorm to make the world a better place for everybody. So it's pretty.
Yeah. This industry is very intertwined. And so most big providers or carriers and technology partners all tend to collaborate and compete in different ways. So it's important to have those conversations consistently. Like there are areas where we're going to go head to head, in this area, right? We're not going to share competitive information. It's off limits. But others where this is an area where.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Sorry, Siri wanted to answer that question.
Siri wanted you to repeat that real quick.
I think that it's something interesting about freight in general is like, it's not, there's certain industries, like I started my career at Pepsi, and when I was there, it was like Pepsi and Coke were like, you didn't always you didn't want to be caught with a Coke right inside in Pepsi.
Sure.
But in transportation, the nature of it is just a lot more collaborative, and you got to know your capabilities and where you compete, and but there's always opportunities to partner where it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the more we can do that, the more everything moves forward for everybody, and the more efficient it becomes. What's on the horizon? You got anything you want to tell us? Give us a scoop on anything, Bill, for Uber.
In terms of what's next, well,
yeah, what's next?
Yeah, well, we've I think 2023 for us is very focused on really leveraging all these capabilities that we brought together when us and Transplace came together. It's really expanding these sorts of engagements where we have pricing APIs, we have our market access products, building out scheduling capabilities and automation, continuing to, I'd say, drive efficiency in the core platform. So when we set out to build Uber Freight right out of the gate, it was about building the most efficient execution platform. We've got a lot more frontier to continue to push there, and so that's a big focus. On the other side, as we came together, Transplace, it's really managing, it's fully outsourced managed transportation. And the focus there is really how do we continue to up level our capabilities and just get smarter with how we execute on behalf of shippers. And really what we brought to the table with Transplace is all this real-time execution, real-time pricing capability. So we continue to invest and bring those things together. And so from a shipper perspective, it means a lot of what we're talking about here in terms of driving automation, driving real-time responsiveness, driving real-time procurement pricing. We're engineering a lot of that in, giving a lot more options to shippers. And on the other side, we just keep building out those capabilities. One area that I'm particularly excited about actually is we have this Power Loop product, which is our trailer pool product. And this year, we're expanding it into more dedicated and contractual opportunities. And really what we found is a lot of traction with that as a product. What we're finding is that we're able to build this very flexible, dedicated product. We're able to increase capacity very quickly up and down because we have this huge digital execution capability, right? So bringing that together with more of an asset-like product, that's a pretty exciting one for me.
It really is. Yeah. Bill, I really appreciate you being on, my friend. I'll continue to beat the drum about just how important I think everybody in the last few years understands just how important logistics is. Unless they were under a rock for the last 3 years, right? They understand just how important the movement of goods and raw materials, et cetera, and especially medicines, et cetera, and food is. But the impacts on the world and our quality of life and sustainability, whether it be environmental or recycling, whatever it is, logistics is key. All of it is a logistics issue, and appreciate the work that you guys are doing there, and really appreciate what you being on the program. Bill, where do people go to find more? Just uber.com and read about what you guys are doing and get in touch?
Uberfreight.com. Uberfreight.com.
Yeah.
You can go right there.
Got to get the freight inside there. Excellent stuff. I really appreciate it, my friend. Hopefully we'll have you on again. I'd love to hear more of what's going on there as we move forward with the consortium. I hope it comes to fruition and does some really great stuff. I'm sure it will. You got great players, including yourself, obviously. But hey, it's been the Sustainiacs. I'm Mike Vincent. You can reach out to me, Michael Vincent, on LinkedIn, or the Sustainiacs just about anywhere. The Sustainiacs at gmail.com for more questions, or even for Bill, if you want to say, hey, Encore, bring him on here. Get him to play his drums maybe next time.
We're going to rock out.
We need to do when we're going to rock out when we have more time. That'd be awesome. That'd be really awesome. Emma, where are they reaching out to you at these days?
Anywhere Sustainiacs. I'm also Emma_Sustainiacs on Instagram, Emma Whiteman on LinkedIn. I was going to say, please send any questions. I'm loving this theme that we kind of have going, Michael, of exploring the ways that social justice and sustainability really go hand in hand. And